Welcome to another episode of Attack of the Killer podcast. This is going to be a different one than normal. I know we say that when we do like commentary episodes and stuff like that, but this is obviously nothing that we've ever done before. Not even doing a theme song or any of our segments or anything. We don't know how long this episode's going to be. It's completely no notes, no nothing. And just a warning to anybody out there who might be a little sensitive to certain topics that, I don't know if any of our conversation might be triggering or anything, but it's definitely going to be a bit of a somber episode. For, a lot of the attackers, no, but if you are more of a casual listener of the show, or regular listener of the show. And if you probably noticed, our last full episode did not have Andy on the episode. And that is because on the July 18th, I had it on my phone ready to go, and I didn't even have it ready. But anyway, yes, July 18th, we lost our podcast brother, dear friend. We lost Andy Wassom with a very, very tough battle with ALS. So that is what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about our friend Andy. There might still be some laughs, because he was definitely a larger-than-life guy and made us laugh all the time, and be sharing a lot of Andy stories throughout this. But we definitely wanted to address it with the listeners. We love Andy very, very much, and we could not continue on without addressing why Andy is no longer on the show. And also be straight with you guys, the listeners, because you deserve to know and as well. So yeah.
Thanks, Mike, because I'm already tearing up, man.
Yeah. So the rest of the gang is here. We've got Jason with us, and we got Tad. I don't even know where to go from there. So feel free to jump in at any time, guys.
I guess I was just going to jump on and say, that, you mentioned the last full episode he was on. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys out there listening or regular listeners, you probably even could tell that things were a little different even with the last episode that Andy was on. Andy got diagnosed with ALS in March. He had been dealing with some weird muscle loss for some time, and muscle spasms and stuff, and a lot of testing, and it took a while to get diagnosed with ALS. But even then, the shocking thing for me still is just, I can just remember back then just how optimistic he sounded about it all. Like, it's just a new thing he's going to have to deal with, and his doctors sounding positive and optimistic.
Yeah, even that second diagnosed, the guy who, it was just like, hey, this good. I mean, there was like, yeah, this one's actually progressing slower than normal, and like, oh, we all had hope, and it took him pretty dang fast.
It went fast. It went fast, folks. It went from like 3 episodes ago of him still doing the show at his desk. Danielle kind of having to help him out a little bit because arm's not very strong. Kind of helping him out. Working the mouse or the keyboard or what have you. Any big things he needed to get done. Down to his last episode where he was doing it from bed, and Danielle was literally working all the the keyboard and the mouse and all that. And you get to hear it in his voice in that last episode too. His voice was sounding a little bit rough, and fans out there, myself included, of his many amazing voices. He had not done recasting in quite some time, just because it was just too much for him to do. So, and you could definitely tell that there's no way you were going to get any of that kind of stuff out of him in that last episode that he did. But man,
It's just, yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, please
Go
do.
ahead.
'Cause
I
I'm
was just
rambling.
no. I was just gonna say like the thing that's been what I was trying to say earlier, and it's just been blowing my mind is like we've talked about this. It's knowledge. Like we record every other Tuesday night. We recorded what we at the time obviously didn't know would be Andy's final episode because we actually reached out to him and Danielle and said, do not feel you're going through some pretty heavy shit. At the time, we even did not know how heavy it was, but said, life is a priority. Don't feel like you owe us. If you're not feeling up to it, take a break. Don't push yourself to be on the show because, this is a silly podcast and your life is important. And, he was like, I think he said something very Andy-like where like, you can't get rid of me that fast. There's plenty of tread on these old tires or something.
Oh yeah.
And then literally like the timeline is just, I keep going through it. My mind is just fucks me up because he recorded his last episode.
And then we had plans to do
Yeah.
the next episode, and he was still ready to go.
He watched the 2 movies,
Yeah.
and we were planning on it, and we had it all scheduled out. Like the day of, I believe, or maybe the day before, Danielle reached out and said, he's got a little bit of sore throat, so he's going to sit this one out just to be safe. He might have caught a cold or his allergies. We don't know. And I didn't think much of that, because it's like to me, and I don't know much about ALS. I would love to learn more. It doesn't sound like a lot of people know a lot about it.
No. And I plan on learning more.
Yeah. And she reached out and said, and we're like, it wasn't, to me at least, it wasn't an alarm. I was like, it's not like cancer where someone, I was thinking, it's not like cancer where if someone gets a cold, that could be it. It's not like his immune system. I don't know.
Yeah, but just like rest your voice, man. Come back
right.
next
Like,
time. And
and I was optimistic. And then it was like,
2 weeks.
literally. Yeah. I mean, we recorded and the next 2 weeks later, Tuesday, he had to cancel out. And I think the next day, like that Wednesday, and Danielle has been fucking awesome. And Andy have both been when Andy was able to every day, we're hearing updates from him. I mean, it started as like every time we recorded, but we talked to Andy every day, but every time we recorded before we hit record, he would, here's the current update. And then it got to a point where Danielle was keeping us updated. And then it was, we got a message that, and she has posted this online, so it's not, private stuff. We've been trying to be very respectful of their privacy, and not, post and go around and tell everyone what's going on, because that's not our position. But she reached out and said, I came downstairs, which we've been to his house. Now we sort of know the layout. Like she came downstairs and found Andy breathing very heavy, having a hard time, and didn't think it was like, it was an emergency, but not, this is it. She ran next door and they have an EMT that's a friend and a neighbor who's really he helped Andy through this whole process. And Danielle, I wish I could meet that guy because, he gave us the best gift ever. But he came over and, basically found Andy unconscious and gave him chest compressions and brought him back to us. They got him to the hospital and they moved him to a bigger hospital because he was in pretty bad shape. It turned out he went to cardiac arrest because he had some kind of bacterial infection. I don't think we ever confirmed whether it was like bronchitis or pneumonia or whatever, it doesn't matter,
Definitely
because
had a phlegm problem that just wouldn't.
yeah, so he had that. So that sore throat was a problem that aggravated his breathing, which when he's breathing heavy, his body's weakened. So it literally put him into cardiac arrest. And if Danielle had not found him, and the neighbor would not have been quick enough, he would have been gone that morning. And it's crazy. It's just like my mind can't fathom, because it goes, we recorded, at the desk. 2 weeks later, he records in bed. 2 weeks later, and 2 weeks later, he cancels, and the next day he goes into cardiac arrest. And literally 2 weeks later, to the day, that following Tuesday, Andy went into palliative care, which is a new term for me. I was not aware. It's sort of like hospice, but it's not even like hospice, because you don't get to go to a special wing in bed. And basically, it's like they gave him medication that he gets to choose when, and he gets to choose who's in the room, and he gets to decide, okay, I'm ready. They gave him medication, took him off his BiPAP mask, which was helping him breathe, and he can go at peace surrounded by the ones he loves. And it's just the timeline is what fucks me up.
Yeah, because when he went into the hospital, I mean, obviously we're concerned. Cardiac arrest, it's pretty serious, right? But
Yeah.
even still, then they were seeming optimistic. We were seeming optimistic. It was like, I think Friday when we finally, it was like, maybe we should send balloons or something to the hospital. And, we debated on it kind of back and forth between the three of us, to the point where it's like, well, he's going to be out by the time he gets them. He's going to be out of the hospital, back at home.
And
There's
they
no
could
sense.
and it's like, he's going to be out, and he could probably use the $30 we're going to spend on balloons.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's going to go home and he's going to need the treatment and all the stuff,
Yep.
that Danielle has been fundraising for. Because, she was keeping us updated, and she was also optimistic. This was another bump in the road, but it sounded like,
We were
the
talking
doctors.
with audio specialists about being able
Yeah.
to use his previously recorded voice to still get him to be able to talk AI style. And like, we were going to be meeting with some of those guys, and just every day the next day was just it was like erase the slate and just start over. It's worse.
And
Yeah.
the things we wanted to do, we couldn't keep up with the updates. Like, okay, we have to buckle down. We have to go see Andy. Let's do it on this date. Well, and then it was SNAF weekend. The attackers heard that bonus episode recapping SNAF, and just every single day it just was just worse and worse. And it's like we knew we didn't have time to go at that point. We wasn't even sure if we were even going to get a chance to talk to him again. So we were like, recorded a video to send to Danielle to show him. And yeah, it was, it just went fast that weekend.
That Sunday of SNAP, we recorded that video that he had decided that Tuesday was his day. And we're like, shit, well, we can't even get there.
Yeah. And,
and to put that into context real quick too, especially now that we have been there, it's a 6-hour drive
Plus,
one
yeah.
way.
Plus.
Yeah, plus. Well, yeah, for Tad it's like almost 8 hours. Yeah.
But if you're like, I think I've had some people just sort of, obviously we've heard a lot of people say, be shocked, because they did not, and we are too, everybody. I think Danielle, hanging out with her over the weekend, is just sort of just still like, this can't be real. Like, this is so fucking stupid. But like, people have asked, like, how did it go from, the hospital to choosing to go, and
Right.
what basically the option were, like Mike mentioned earlier, they were and they were talking about, different options for communications, figuring out whether it's a voice box, all this stuff, because the only option they really had to keep him around, because basically they put on this BiPAP mask, and it's not quite a ventilator, but it's also not an oxygen mask. It's somewhere in between, where it's not breathing for him, but it's helping him. It's not just pumping oxygen; it is helping him inhale and exhale, and it's very uncomfortable. It goes over your whole entire face, almost beside your eyes and down under your chin. And he had a tube through his nose to help with feeding. So he hadn't had anything to eat or drink in 10 days. And they gave him basically, the choice, ultimatum. Him and Danielle, they basically said, and from what Danielle was saying, she said that they almost were just like, almost not even going to give him the choice. We're just going to, like, here's what we have to do to save him is give him a trach, which is, typically you see trachs in, the old, I think of the 80s commercials where they're anti-smoking commercials where they're like, if you smoke, you're going to get throat cancer and they're going to have to cut a hole in your throat. And the people who talk with the little, robot voice type thing. That's what they were saying, that they would do that. And he would have like a stomach plug, basically a plug that goes right to his stomach that Danielle would hook a feeding tube up and feed him. So he would never speak again. He would never drink. He would never eat again. He would just be pumping nutrition into his stomach to keep him around for who knows how much longer. And, he...
With a fully functional brain. And conscious.
But a completely non-functional body.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so at that point, he could no longer really... I mean, it wasn't even a matter of, like, if you take his voice away, he can write. He cannot write. He maybe could blink, but, there's just not... They gave him two choices, do this or pick when you want to go. And if you guys... And you do, your listeners, Andy, that would be a literal prison for him to be that brain of his, that manic, crazy son of a bitch stuck in a body that if he couldn't talk, that would just be torture for him because, you've listened to the show, that man loved to talk, loved to express himself, and a great writer. And if he can't communicate, then it's not, I think the choice was probably pretty easy for him. And as far as like, if I have these two options, and of course it's not an easy choice for anyone, but, Danielle, like I said, had been updating us through it. And she was basically saying, she told him not to make the choice when he was hungry. And, they got him rested and gave him time because it sounded like the doctors were like, we just want to jump in and do this thing, and see where it goes. And Andy, I think, was just sort of like, and then what, sit here in this bed or sit in a bed at home for however long and just not
prolong the inevitable.
Right. And especially for him, man, like that to him is not living, that's existing. And he didn't, and
that being a burden on her, he didn't want to.
Right.
Do that.
Yeah. He told us that like right after he was officially diagnosed at Mayo that, and like you said, he was optimistic. He was saying, if I have to be in a wheelchair or whatever, I'm cool with that. I just don't want, as long as I'm not a burden on Danielle's life, then I'm cool with it. I'll have to figure it out and deal with it. And that was like 2 months ago, probably. It's like, wild shit, man.
Yeah. So, he made the decision for it to be, the 18th, so then he could spend the rest of that time, having his family. I know his brother was over in Europe or something, right? Or something like that. So waiting for him to get back. Also, he can, like, see the people he loved, talk to the people he loved, let him know how he felt about them and getting to... for all of them to be able to, say their goodbyes and getting to tell him how much, they love him. And I know that time was extremely precious to him and to Danielle, with all the family and stuff. And they were so gracious of giving us an hour of that time and doing a Skype with him on that Monday before. letting us get on and get a chance to talk to Andy and let him know how much we love him and how much he means to us and our chances to say goodbye, and for him to tell us how much we have meant to him. So that's an opportunity in this whole messed up thing we call life that you don't get very often. And
One in a million.
One in a million. And forever, I mean, we've all lost some people in our lives, and you don't get that opportunity. And you always have that, like, man, I just wish I could see them one last time, tell them I love them or whatever. We got that with Andy, and the fact that they took that time for us, and I know it was for Andy as well, but his family, Danielle, and her family giving us that hour is something I'm eternally grateful for.
Yeah, he had, I mean, obviously, it's like I think in terms of like hours. I mean, we literally talked to him at 5 p.m. and 25 hours and 11 minutes, or it's like down, like literally, like he had 24 hours left, and we got one of those 24 hours, and that's like the fucking best thing anyone's ever given to me.
Mm-hmm. As you say, the best worst thing, the best worst call of your life.
Oh yeah, I mean, we all knew when we sent Danielle that video on Sunday. We thought worst case scenario he'll get to see this, but best case scenario and worst case scenario, it's like we'll get to talk to him tomorrow, and knowing that all day Monday, I'm sure you guys felt the same way. It was just like, what the fuck do I say to a person? I've never been in a position knowing that this would be the last time I get to say something. And of course, I was just a fucking bubbling mess immediately.
So
and
you were the most coherent one out of all of us. Who are you kidding?
But then Andy, he gets on and he can't even fucking breathe, and he's dropping,
fucking
knowledge on us.
And
profound quotes that could be chiseled on all of our tombstones. And
just right out of the gate, like talking about his Dennis Hopper cosplay look from Blue Velvet.
Yeah,
because he's got that mask on his face,
making fun of himself. And I thought one thing that really stuck out to me, obviously, all of it was fantastic. We recorded it, and maybe someday go back and look, but probably not, because we have a lot of good videos of Andy, luckily. But one thing that stood out to me is that Andy was never one to, and even when we got to see meeting his mom this weekend, she was like, I didn't know for the first year that he was on the podcast. I joked, and we sort of joked, and I said, I'm not even sure Andy knew we were recording for the first year. I think he just thought, because Andy, you guys might not know, but Andy doesn't listen to podcasts. He didn't ever listen to podcasts. No. I don't know if he knew what a podcast was when he joined the podcast.
That's so true.
I probably just was like, hey, man, I got some friends you got to meet. You should hang out with us on Skype. And he had a blast, and it was like, you want to do it again next week? And he probably thought it was just a Zoom call. And then it's like, oh, you're recording this? But towards our last conversation, he could literally say one word at a time, and Danielle was translating through the mask for us. Said that it meant the world to him that we gave him the opportunity to speak to you guys, like the listeners, and to read, because I think once, and maybe it's just in my brain, I don't know, we never got to really discuss it, but it's like, I think maybe when he started doing the horror hangouts with us, and he got to see Roman and Stefan, and it's like, oh, it's not just like a group of our close friends,
people
like
from all over the world, you dummy. Just
all over the world, and people we don't know, and we've met through the show because of the show, and I think it clicked for him. And so he mentioned, in that last talk, like, to be able to reach people all over the world, and to be able to hear, like, to make friends and hear, that his insight and his knowledge on horror was appreciated and meant something to people. And I think it finally was like clicking to him because you might have noticed Andy never like shared links about the show. He never he never promoted it. Andy, for all his family knew, he was never on this thing. But then when we were there this weekend, we were like, oh my gosh, the podcast guys, Andy's, and we're like, apparently we meant something to him. Apparently he mentioned us a few times because everybody wanted a hug from us, and it's like, damn, Andy did care. He just had a different way of sharing it.
Yeah, I definitely, through that last conversation with him, and then all his family talking to him over the weekend, it really dawned on me how much this show being on this show meant to him.
Oh yeah.
And not just the fact that hey, I get to talk, and get heard all over the world, but the fact that he has now a circle of friends that he could talk about this shit with, because
we learned how fucking small his town is.
Yeah,
He is literally in the middle of fucking nowhere.
So, and I think it was Danielle that said
that doesn't even make sense.
Something about like he just never really felt like he had connections with people because of his interests. I mean, even though he was obviously well loved, you should have seen the crowd at that church.
Oh man,
the
he
guy,
had plenty of friends, just not his horror friends.
Yeah, just nobody to talk to about this stuff. And then he meets us, and now he's got somebody to talk to about this stuff, and not just on the podcast. Tad, you said that you guys like message practically every day about like, hey, this Blu-ray's coming out.
T-shirts.
Oh my
the
gosh,
thing.
yeah. I mean, we just basically, enabled each other. Yeah. And, and I think in a game of chicken, I don't know what you consider the winner or loser, but looking at Andy's house, if you're saying spending the most money is the loser, he was losing because I think I saw just about everything I've sent him over the past 10 years in that house.
But having the biggest, coolest, and best collection is the winner, then
right.
He won that.
He's won all of us. Yeah, he's the winner. I don't care who you are listening. He has a bigger collection than you. Danielle kept joking, like, you need to come up and see the Smith Wassom Museum. They can charge admission, man. Like, we spent like 4 hours in one room, basically, of his house and still didn't see all of it.
It's the Forrest J. Ackerman Museum of Nebraska.
Yeah.
But
it's just,
amazing.
Him being in the middle of nowhere. I'm sure that, I come from a small town too. I feel lucky that I met you guys, but like he's really out there.
Yeah.
Like it's a miracle that they just somehow picked Snake Alley out of a hat to send a script to, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I asked Danielle about that. If the listeners, and I guess we can jump into that. We on the drive home were discussing like trying to connect all the webs and figure out like Andy's first episode and how he became a member. And I told him on our last discussion, I said I've never told you this because I don't want your ego to get too big. Joking with him, of course, but. Andy came on. The first episode was the Piranha 3D episode as a commentary.
164.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've known Andy for almost 10 years, which I was surprised to hear Danielle was saying, doing the math, and she's like, it's crazy to think I've only known him 10 years, so I must have met them like right when they started dating. It must have been like their first sort of one of their bigger trips was the Snake Alley. Because it's been at least 9 or 10 years. And, it was like, we were looking back and we couldn't, we were like, why did we have like 5 guests on these shows? But we did a commentary, and basically I had my friend Adam over at my actual house and gave him a second mic and a headset. And then I was like, we should have my friend Andy, I know through the film festival, on the show as a guest. He's really funny. He knows his horror through and through. But in that conversation, I told him the story about how I invited him on the show. We did a commentary. He made us all bust out laughing with his Ving Rhames impression throughout the whole episode. We hung up, and then immediately in the group chat, it was like, you think this guy's
You think what I'm thinking?
Yeah, think of what I'm thinking. This guy could be like the next, co-host with us if he's up for it. And I honestly remember being like, I don't know, man. He's Andy. Like I mean, not that like I didn't think he's a fit. I just didn't know if he would say yes because he's
Sure.
he was so such a routine guy. If you didn't know, he would wake up every morning at like 4 a.m. and put on a weighted vest and weighted ankle weights, and he'd walk the neighborhood like a weirdo.
Oh,
And now we've seen that neighborhood, and
makes sense.
yeah, and then he'd go home and he would watch movies while lifting weights, and hang out with his cats and his wife, and that was Andy's life. So to throw this new thing into his routine,
I'm not sure he knew what he was saying yes to, but
right. But it literally, I told him, like it went from you guesting on a commentary to the next episode 2 weeks later he was the co-host. We did not wait another episode. I didn't get that privilege even, man. It wasn't even the next episode. Like, no, that might be the fastest. And we were sort of joking. We had Blake and Adam on the show, and it was like, was it an audition? I'm like, no, that was never intention. But to think like we had 2 other guests on, and Andy stood out so much that the next episode he's listed as a host, and that was history. Ever since then.
almost 5 years ago.
And we were listening to a little bit before we called you, Tad, for this. We were listening to like the intro to the next episode, 165, which is about 824, and we were doing the podcast crew intros, and he's the first introduced.
Yeah.
There's no like, hey, welcome aboard, anything like that. It's as if he'd
Just
been
like he's old.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Mike's intros still haven't gotten any better since then.
Come on.
They are so bad. Sorry. I love you.
Yeah. So, and then we were just like the synchronicity of Andy, like when we went to his visitation on the way up, when we were talking about one of our favorite listeners and friend and frequent guest, Mike Reeb, the Reebster. You can do the little thing. There we go. We're talking about him and how this weird web of like Reebster knew Andy, and we knew Reeb, but like you guys didn't know Andy, but I knew Andy and I didn't know Reeb. And it's like everybody knew each other somehow, but not, it was like the 5 degrees of Andy Wassom.
Yeah.
And it's like weird to think of a time, because to me it's like I don't know, like you guys I feel like I've been your guys' friends like forever, and it's like
it definitely feels that way sometimes. Yeah.
And I knew Andy before I knew you guys, and it's like that, like how it's just like my brain just doesn't like process like, yeah, we've all just been this family of horror friends forever, and
Yep.
And then we see Reeb at the visitation, and
we get there and there's Reeb,
and got to talk to him. And Reeb is a busy family man, so he wasn't on social media, and just found out like 3 a.m. the day of the visitation. So I can't imagine what a surprise that was to him. I don't even which it surprised us, and we were hearing updates every day. So I can imagine you, the listeners, when you saw that, were just sort of, holy shit.
God forbid if you're finding out through this show right now. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But I've been like on the notepad thing on my phone, have written like a post like 15 times and deleted it about like Andy and what he meant to me and how I met him and our history. And it's like nothing ever, for a wordsmith like him, is like nothing feels worthy.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out just a way to like word it without making it sound too fake or preachy. And I'm just imagining in my head him like correcting and making fun of what I'm saying and call me names for crying on a podcast about him. And but it's just like, until this sort of happened, I didn't even really like, my brain didn't even really like remember like, oh, I met Andy Danielle through the film festival. And it is just a weird anomaly because I asked Danielle to visitation, like, how did you, what sparked this? Like, how did you end up at Snake Alley? Because we just made this drive, and it is not like a close film festival. Burlington
No,
and
there has to be way more closer film festivals
yeah,
to where they are.
and Chester are not nearby. And she said that she submitted first and got accepted, and they liked the fest so much that the next few years they both submitted work, and they both were writer's block winners, winners of best screenplays, and I just even now that it was when I met Andy, I was not running the film festival. I was just like a goer, a fan, a person in attendance. Was not a judge, was not a volunteer. Just was going to watch some films and because I loved it. And I'm not one. Even now that I run it, there's sometimes I am just so meek and shy around new people that I'm like, I try to put myself out there and meet everybody that comes because I do appreciate everybody, but also I get anxious. But I remember like seeing this dude who had the funny, like the nicest warm smile and fucking jacked, like ripped and wearing a super tight shirt and just a cool looking dude. And he was wearing like all weekend wearing like horror shirts. And then I was like, he's like the only one he like wrote a horror screenplay. Like no one before or after Andy, no one's really done that. Like that was his realm. And I was like, shit, man, this guy, and it was like very Twilight Zone-esque, I remember. And I was like, I gotta know this guy. It's gonna have to get over break the ice and just get out of my comfort zone and get to know this guy. Because I was going to after parties and stuff, but I was hanging out with my friends and, introduced myself to him and of course met Danielle. And I'm like, oh, these guys are the best. And Andy, he didn't know a stranger, he would make sure he was not like meek or shy or anything. He talked to everybody.
No, yeah.
And so, he was always he was not one to actually go to many of the after parties. If him and Daniel they left pretty early because Andy, if you guys don't know, was sober. So he, was over that addiction, very proud of himself getting over that. So, him and Danielle did not stay out late, and as I made fun of Andy on the show all the time for going to bed at like 8:00 at night, much to his dismay. Just waiting for a ghost slap anytime now. But yeah, so it just what I'm trying to say is like I met them, almost 10 years ago, and have always kept in touch through social media, and then I look forward to them coming every year for the festival and getting to see them in person and hang out with them all weekend, and just became sort of this like cool little family you get to see once a year. And then when I got to have him as a guest and an eventual co-host on the show and introduce him to my other friends that I met through the film festival and through local horror scene and stuff, like you create that bond. And I always talk about like the Jason and Mike, like I've met so many great people through you guys. I was glad to like bring one to you finally. And it's like weird to think about, a time before that when we weren't doing that. But what I'm trying to say too is that because of that, it went from once a year at Snake Alley to now we get to see him at Crypticon Kansas City. And then we get to see him at Halloween Palooza and, wherever. And it was like, we got to try to get to see him as much as we could. And, it was great to be able to see Andy in his element, which is at a horror con or horror,
Oh yeah, yeah. I watched this morning all of his videos that he's featured in for Attack of the Killer podcast, all of his video updates and stuff. And my favorites are the ones where there's like 4 or 5 of them where it's us at either at Halloween Palooza or Crypticon that we're all together. Jason took all those videos and our video updates are a Patreon perk exclusive for the attackers, but he made all those available for in a playlist for everybody to see on there on YouTube, so you guys can see Andy and get to see some of his collection. But we did that soda pop challenge.
Yeah, he brought
taste test. Yeah,
the Roddy Piper bubble gum. all out of bubblegum soda for us. I love that he like drove that shit. I mean, the drive that we took, he drove that soda all the way from there to Ottumwa, and then he came to us and was like, "Let's do this." You know, I love it. Like,
Yeah.
he was, you know, that he held on to that bottle as much as he wanted to, you know, either keep it up on the shelf and not drink it, or, you know, just drink it at home. He's like, "Oh, we got to make something out of this."
Yeah, it was his plan. I mean, he got enough for all of us to, you know, all four of us to
Do a dumb little video for it.
yeah, just to do a
Together.
video. Yeah. Yeah.
And then his funeral was the next day.
After the visitation. Yeah, Monday was the funeral. And yeah, again, I can't get over just how
Which was yesterday.
packed that yeah,
that
for
we're
us that
recording
was
this?
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had to go upstairs. There were so many people, and they had to like, yeah. I mean, it was like there was nowhere else to sit. If anybody else would
Standing
have
room
come,
only at that.
yep.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome to see.
I think looking at our drives through Chester, I'm pretty sure everybody in town was there.
Yeah, kind of.
I think they might have just shut the town down for Andy.
Yeah,
It felt like it. Yeah.
it really did.
Yeah.
And they told some great Andy stories that
great Andy stories.
we might not. A few of them we haven't heard, and a few we have. I think we're all still laughing about how they talked about his penchant for professional wrestling, which you guys all knew about. His obsession with 80s and 90s wrestling, even in the 70s. But his older siblings, Andy was the youngest. He has an older sister that we got to meet. She's fantastic, and an older brother. And his older brother and sister would tease him about his love for wrestling, and his brother told him, you know this stuff is not real. And Andy kicked him in the groin. This is a 10-year-old Andy, I believe is what they said.
Yeah, he was 10. Yeah.
Yeah, kicked his older brother in the groin and is like, is it real now? Is that or something like, is that real?
Is that real? Yeah.
Does that feel real?
Yeah. And I heard it in Andy adult voice, but like pitched down a little bit because he.
I like the story about the Monte Carlo. Like
Yes.
he wanted a
gosh.
Monte Carlo so bad, and his friends and family used to tease him that he would never get one. And he worked really hard, I think, at Pizza Hut or something to save up money. Got himself a Monte Carlo, his dream car, and got a personalized license plate that said, "I told you so." And that is
Just a big fuck
Such-
you to
yes.
everybody ever gave him shit about it. I told you.
it's great too. I mean, that's obviously something that the whole family cherishes because they had that license plate at the visitation
They
and
did.
at the funeral.
Too funny.
Yeah.
It's just such an Andy thing.
I don't know if you guys got a little chuckle out of it, but when the pastor, reverend, I don't remember. Yeah, is doing the sermon and starts talking about Andy and starts talking about the being a fan of wrestling, and he's doing that long, really funny
Styling,
description.
The
profiling.
Ric Flair
The Ric Flair.
speech
I feel like Andy wrote. I mean, did Andy
made
write
him
that?
say it right.
Just to make
I know.
him say that in church, because I think even Mother Lovin' was one of the
Yep.
one
Yep.
of the descriptives.
He had to change a few things about that, and he had to change. Andy sort of had one last thing he had to say on his way out, and I know Andy in the actual what he actually said was, as shitty as it has been to lay here in this bed for the last 10 days without a drop of water and any food. They did not say shitty, obviously, in the church. But I love that Danielle made sure it said that like everywhere else in the post and stuff, because that's what he said.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, that cracked me up too. I'm like, somewhere Andy's watching and he's just fucking rolling that he got this said in a church for the first time ever.
Yeah, I was laughing at that and was pretty proud of him for that accomplishment, 'cause that was awesome. Never have I heard
Yeah.
a religious figure talk like that. It was awesome.
And it was
In the
streamed.
church.
It's streamed on Facebook. I need to like get that clip and we need to send it to Ric Flair somehow. We need to get it to him so he can
Yeah.
see that it was said at a funeral in a church because it's got to be the only time. But yeah, that was perfect. And then just the flood of photos between the visitation and funeral. It's hard, but also just it's hard not to fucking laugh at so many because Andy. You know, obviously he had family pictures where he's smiling and stuff, but man, like that guy knew how to pose for a photo
Fucking
and
goofball.
and had a million of them. Like just I mean, between the two, we were there for hours and we seen, and it's like I don't think I saw the same one repeat twice. You know,
Yep.
and we're sitting in the most somber, sad moment ever in a church, and I have tears welling up in my eyes, and then I'm like laughing. It's like
Yep.
my brain doesn't know how to process it because just the stream of pictures of him, the one that always makes me laugh, and it popped up before we made the trip, and just I've been scrolling through Facebook and just looking at old pictures and stuff, and was when he was in town in Burlington for the film festival, and he was wearing his Macho Man purple
Macho
T-shirt.
Man picture is the
And-
best.
And he is at like and what makes it better is I know where he's at. It's this store that is like for women in their like, you know, like basically like older women, like 50 to 60. It's like they buy like the whole store is color coordinated. So you go to the yellow section, you get like a yellow purse with a yellow necklace and a yellow hat, or a green. It's like it's not like even it's like an old woman store, and he somehow found these big stupid sunglasses, and he was like Macho Man glasses, put them on, did a Macho Man pose, flexed, and had Danielle take a picture. And that's just what
perfect.
yeah, it was perfect. It looked just, you know, he had the pose down just on cue.
Because
And
he clearly had practiced it 100 times.
right. And the best, yeah, it just cracks me up because he's at a store where these old women are just like, have no idea what he's doing. He just grabs these sunglasses off the shelf and strikes a pose. And that was Andy, man. Like, and he's shopping in an old woman's store and finds a way to do that shit, you know? Like, you're going to drag me in here. I'm going to make a scene out of it.
Always a goofball.
Yeah.
And just seeing the flood of photos from Snake Alley, it brings up so many memories. And, you know, over the years, the different Andys, we had long curly hair Andy. We had, you know, buzzed hair Andy. We had the cool, like, what do you call this? Newsy hat Andy.
Right.
And then looking through, I saw, like, you know, pictures of his parents. And then when we got to meet his parents this weekend, his mom was like, oh, we actually made that trip. I'm like, I saw you in the pictures, and some, you know, I'm sure I met them when they were there and just didn't remember each other. But for them to make that trip, you know, they were so proud of
Yeah.
Andy.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Like
That trip wiped me out. I can't imagine.
yeah. And I explained to her, his mom, I'm like, my dad has never been. He lives in Burlington.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not like a poor me. It's like, it's just like you really loved your son, man. Like you made that trip. That's dedication, you know. And it was evident how proud they were of Andy and his siblings, and just so much love for him. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it was like it was hard, but it was just weird because, you know, and Danielle said it too. Was like, you know, it probably comes off as like weird to everybody because I'm here laughing, but I mean, it's Andy, man. Like that's what he. Yeah,
it's
it's
what
like
he want. He would want that.
right, and we don't have stories where, you know, remember when Andy did this or that. It's always remember when Andy fucked with us and made us laugh, or said that thing that made us laugh, or did that impression and
Ruined Don Knotts for us forever.
Yep. Bullwinkle.
Yeah, like Andy's mom talking with her at the visitation. She had no idea that he did all these impersonations. He would not share that with her, and I think that's, you know, probably because, you know, you guys have heard recasting. He gets a little nasty,
R-rated.
very R-rated. And, you know, we were talking about like, well, you know, putting together some of that for her so she can hear some of it. And it's like, well, we'll have to do the mom edit, so, which would be really, really short.
It'd be the intro, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, then even hearing when he was still with us, and we're getting updates, or Danielle was sort of joking with us, like, he's made it clear, like, his mom's the best woman in the world. Like, it ranks above me. And we're like, oh, no. And his mom's going, no, no. And she goes, no, he said, like, she is the like, greatest woman to live and the best, whatever. And it was just funny, like, hearing that. And then we get to, meet the legendary mom, and she might be the sweetest human I've ever met.
She was a sweetheart. She's a sweetheart, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Doesn't surprise me that Andy has awesome parents and siblings, and Danielle does too. Her family's great.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I've never, even in my own family, have been to like a celebration of life and funeral stuff where just everybody was just so good. Everybody was just so nice and sweet and welcoming and warm. And I just never felt uncomfortable. It was like, I was just sort of, and not my expectations were like, this is going to be doom and gloom, but man, like, they just embraced us like we were family and welcomed us to, Chester, and just.
It's comforting to me just to know that his life was surrounded by that.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
And those are the people that were with him when he decided to go, and know that he was, surrounded with love and the right people, and he wasn't alone, and like he said, he didn't go out on his living room floor,
Yeah.
Yeah.
This might be a tough one to try to remember. We've
What are you
done so
doing?
many episodes. I don't.
I know.
I want some more. I want some more fun stories. But does
Yeah.
anybody have a particular podcast memory that stands out with Andy? I mean, obviously, love the recasting, and I think I've talked about it before. But when he added Bullwinkle Moose to the mix,
That's the one that.
here's the thing, though, is what I love. I mean, Don Knotts, hands down, was the second he would start doing Don Knotts, I would die laughing. But
Yep.
didn't matter what he was saying. But when he would get Don Knotts to start swearing it and then forget about it, I pee my pants every time. But I swear, and he, all that like improv-y stuff that he's doing in between the script reads,
Yeah.
he's got that all planned out. And I swear, I even think I called him out on it, but he didn't admit to it. But I swear he intentionally did a story arc with Bullwinkle Moose during recasting. Because if you go back and listen to when he starts doing Bullwinkle Moose, he's like Bullwinkle straight out of the cartoon, very naive, and then by the end he's like
The worst
doing
of all
cocaine
of
with
it.
Don Knotts and Gary Busey,
Yeah, for me it was like I couldn't believe like how like Gary Busey was beyond natural to him. Like he obviously had a lot of it scripted, but like
Yeah.
it felt like Gary Busey was true improv. Like
Well,
he really became that version of Gary Busey. It
If
was
you go
unreal.
back to before we started doing recasting, and we would just force him on the show to do
Yeah.
Gary Busey, he would just
Just-
pull something out of his ass that was utterly hilarious about.
a little too close to home.
Well, I think, yeah, like, obviously, really fantastic stuff. Like, out of all the segments we do, it's
Or
it
have ever
was-
done.
Yeah, just incredible. Like, I don't know if people truly, they laugh obviously, but the amount of work, and and Danielle was telling us, he would do this in Notepad on his desktop, and she finally was like, put them in Google Docs so you can save them, because these are not just him like, okay, I'm going to do a scene from Rob Zombie's Halloween and throw these. Like, he had to come up with all the intro, the dialogue leading. That was the stuff, leading into the scene where they were introducing each character, and all the wild shit that Busey would say to the rest of the cast was him writing.
Yep.
It was not something there were not quotes from Busey that he has said before.
Yep.
That was Andy's brain creating that. That
loved it.
wild shit is so funny because it's
That's
literally like
Andy.
he could have been writing, sketch comedy,
Yeah, he
literally,
could have. Yeah.
and he had this just like in his back pocket, and we're like, hey, you should do like a segment on the show.
Be performing this.
Yeah. Yes.
Or
absolutely.
he could have been performing.
Yeah.
Another thing I love about recasting that makes me laugh is that he would tell us that he would practice while he was at work. So
Yeah.
he probably looked
Yeah.
like the craziest fucking guy ever, just yelling to himself out loud, practicing out loud at work. And
Wasn't there a
It's so
story he was
funny.
talking about how he would practice it at work and like he would get caught laughing to himself because he would come up with some bit or something?
And they'd be like, "What the fuck's wrong with you?"
yeah, yes.
And I don't remember if he ever mentioned it like on the actual like while we're recording or if it was always off, after we hit stop. And he'd always mention it, and Danielle mentioned it to her family members this weekend. Was that when he did Don Knotts, his two cats just wanted to get it on for some reason. Like it was some kind of mating call, something about the pitch in his voice.
Frequencies.
Yeah,
just
made his cats get horny for each other.
every time.
Yeah, it was like, and that was the only time that it would happen. Like it wasn't.
Just for Don Nuts.
So when you go back and listen,
I mean, I get it.
But yeah, just imagining the cats like flinging themselves all over the house and then just like mounting each other because of the Don Knotts, the chaos in that house. While Andy's trying to do this, while Andy's trying to stay, I want to see these Google Docs. We'll see if Danielle can send us one because I want to see like how he, knowing Andy's brain, like how he set up a Google Doc. We know that he could barely turn on his microphone.
I know.
So to how he could. Like when Danielle says notepad, it's like I almost wonder, does she mean like
physical?
Yeah,
paper
because she did say she copied and pasted it into
So
Google
it
Docs.
It was
But-
notepad, the program.
But I'm just like, to keep that all straight, to be and seamlessly. There would be times, very few, times where he would stumble or like stop for a second, and then after we hit stop, he'd apologize profusely, like, "I can't believe I did that," and we're like, "I can't believe you don't do that every fucking time you change characters, because
Yeah.
I would. Like, there's no way I could ever do any of that, dude. Like,
Dude.
we could all have one character, and I still wouldn't be able to like keep up with it."
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I script out things I say for the show, and I stumble over it all the time, and that's just my own voice. I'm not trying to do 4 or 5 voices. And just for people who don't realize, there was no editing in that. He would jump from voice to voice like that seamlessly.
Live,
Yeah,
live,
live.
while we're listening, like in real time. It's fucking wild. Like he could have done, if he was a little more tech savvy, it could have been something he recorded on his
and we
own
played.
time. Yeah, and then we add it to the show later. But that was not the case for him. He just jump on and just made it seem so effortless that it's just mind blowing. Like I said, he could have been a comedy writer and performer. Just literally the timing was. I mean, people don't also realize like the writing fantastic, but the timing of things is perfect.
yeah.
His comedic timing is what makes it too. Like he knows when to pause. He knows how to react.
Because he knew those movies. He knows all the
inside,
movies.
you're right, inside and out, and yeah.
He knew those scenes. And 100% of the time we'd get done, he'd email me. He'd be like, "Was that okay?"
Yeah.
Just always humble.
Like,
Yeah.
no, I just pissed my pants because it was awful.
Yeah.
yeah.
I had to like pull my face away from the mic because I didn't want my laughter to override his voices. And
I know it.
Oh, yeah.
We failed at that a lot, though. Yeah.
I know I did, yeah.
So funny. Yeah.
my favorites, obviously, some of the back and forth bickering we did in all in jest,
Oh,
because
man.
I knew how to poke the bear of Andy and get that like engine revving until it just fucking pedal to the floor, get Andy going, then he would just let it go. All in good fun. A little bit of that stuff back and forth, our debates on things, or when he would either really loved or really hated a movie. If he was
Oh,
neutral
yeah.
on it, it was
Dude,
nothing. But
that's-
if
It's probably
Yeah.
still one of my hands down all time favorite moments on the show. And obviously, probably all of us, because it gets brought up all the time. We talk about bad movies, and that is his review on Clowntergeist. There's never been so much hatred spewed through a microphone for a movie than Andy at that moment.
To only attach this shitty movie he hates to himself because he ranted so hard.
It became a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he became associated with a movie he hates so much. Not all the
'Cause
things that
hated
he
it too hard.
right, all the great things he said about 150 other movies leading up to it. This movie stuck out so much that it just became synonymous with him. That he, for the rest of his life, he got teased about it.
We'll try and find that clip and cut it
that'd
out.
be awesome.
That'd be pretty fun.
And it sort of became his bar for movies. It was like, nothing could get worse. So it was like, well, at least it wasn't Clowntergeist. and maybe another thing that I always thought was great was when me and him would rarely agree on something, and it was like, what? Like,
What do we do now?
we feel the same. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I actually agree with Tad on this one. I'm like, are you sure? Which is funny because like in real life, like we're both obviously hardcore Twin Peaks and John Carpenter. Like we have a
You
lot of
guys have
stuff.
a lot in
So
common
much-
as far
so
as
much
tastes
in
go.
common.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the show, when we would disagree a lot, and a lot of it was just like I said, poking fun at him about the Jordan Peele thing. I knew really.
Oh,
could
you'd
get-
always get him with that.
Yeah, and just knowing because I know Andy. I commend him for actually being the one person I know that will say I didn't like Get Out, but just to rag on him every time, be like, well, I mean, you don't even like Get Out, so what's your opinion matter? And what? Like he just get going. The time I told him when we're talking about the new Candyman coming out, and I was like,
Oh,
so you don't like Nia DaCosta, so you're sexist too? Oh my God, he blew up on me.
Up.
I think that was on a bonus episode because I remember messaging him afterwards, and I'm like, I'm sorry if I really got you mad. And he's like, no, like that was. He's like, for a second I was pissed off, but we just, it's a show, man. Like this is what we do, and telling like. I remember I probably messaged Brian Clark and I was like, you need to get on our Patreon, so you can hear this rant that Andy really got pissed at me. It was fun.
Yeah.
Any other show moments? Well, there's the infamous how he would answer the call every time we started setting up the show. Every time he would connect onto the call, he'd be like, "What?" Every time.
Yeah. So we use a program called Clean Feed, and it's basically like Skype or whatever, but was just audio only. It's an audio recorder through the browser, and Jason sets it all up with all the sounds and clips and everything, and he sends us individual links. And Andy was usually the last one to jump on the call because he's out in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska.
He had to put his weights down.
He had to put his weights down and had to put the water bottle or dangle the carrot in front of the hamster that runs Chester's internet.
Right.
And he would jump on and we'd all be waiting for it and it'll pop up and here comes Andy and you just what? Like we're interrupting his dinner or interrupting his family time. Like what do you want?
But he did it every time for 5 years.
Yes, and we laughed every fucking time.
Every time. Yep.
Never changed the tone of it. Never. It was the same exact joke every other Tuesday for 5 straight years, and we still laughed at it.
Yep.
And he even did it on our very last talk with him.
He did.
Yeah, he did.
He fucking did.
And he did it in some of the videos you guys mentioned.
Yeah, there's a couple of the. I urge everybody to go check out his videos on the Killer Podcast YouTube channel. There's a couple of them on there. He starts off with the what? It's great.
And
it's great.
And speaking of those, it always cracked me up because the dynamic sort of behind the scenes in creating the content for the attackers, we'd always be like, Andy, dude, I've recorded 8 videos, get one out, man. And he took it so seriously, he didn't want to just jump in front of the phone and open a new toy like I do, not saying that, I'm just pumping out shit for you guys, but Andy, if he was if I'm going to record a video, I'm going to give you a 20-minute thing where I go into depth about this whole horror box I got or this new, it was never just an unboxing to Andy. He wanted to like he's just almost like a perfectionist. He'd have Danielle film it, and I'm like, dude, just get a tripod, and like show off some of your stuff because. As we know now, we knew his collection. He did the little tour of his room, but when you're in that fucking room, he could have done a new video every day on something in that room and gone for the rest of all of our lives and never repeated the same thing twice. But to know that like he cared that much about the quality of stuff, like he didn't want to just push out something. He wanted to. He's like, I'm going to save it up so I can make something, a longer video, something more. I don't know.
He did one of my favorite ones that he did. He goes through the history of formats for horror movies and using stuff from his collection. So he'll start off talking about Super 8, and then he goes to Beta, and he goes to VHS. And it just shows a video like that just shows the work he would put into it. It wasn't just always about there'd be a theme or trying to do something maybe a little educational in it. It was never just about like, hey, look at my stuff.
Yeah, because I'm definitely like look at my stuff, but Andy could have been look at my stuff because we looked at his stuff and holy shit, man.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and then you also joked, it was pretty funny, that after now having seen his house, that if he did a video, he probably didn't do as many videos because it would take him forever to dig out all the stuff from all the different rooms to get it onto one video.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be a chore just to get the items together. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing that from our visit this weekend, we like I said, we got to finally go see the Smith Wassom Museum and look through Andy's massive collection. The thing that we all just like, I mean, we kept pointing like we're like kids in candy store, just kept pointing at thing. Look at this, look at this, look at this, and it was like very surreal because it's not just someone's collection. This is like. You felt like you were with, like this is a piece of Andy, like it absolutely his personality in a house. But the thing that will always stand out to me was, and we all laughed about it, was that he had this Vincent Price Shrunken Head kit, this big one, beautiful box. And Mike was like, we're all talking about like, oh, did you see this? And Mike's like, this really stood out for me, that Vincent Price, that old vintage Vincent Price Shrunken Head kit. And I'm like, holy shit, you see what's on top of the Vincent Price Shrunken Head kit? What is it? It's a mini Vincent Price Shrunken Head kit. And it's like the size of literally my thumbnail. Yeah, the size of my thumbnail.
It's like one of those mini brand toys.
Yeah, it is. It's not saying like it's the size of a business card. It's the size of a fucking thumbnail. No joke. Like, and I picked it up off the shelf, and to my surprise, it wasn't just like glued onto a little square. It opened and had a fucking mini kit inside of it. And I just knowing Andy so well, we're just like laughing because it's just like, I have one and I found a mini one. I should get the mini one too. Like he had to have both of them, which I can relate to because if I saw a mini version of that, it's so fucking cool.
One of the videos I watched today, going back through them all, was his horror board game collection, and he pulled out that Shrunken Head kit, and I was just laughing thinking about the mini one the whole time. But what else? Or like when we saw the Rock'em Sock'em Christmas ornament, Rock'em Sock'em Robots Christmas ornament, and we bring it up to Danielle, and she's like, "Yeah, we got 4 different versions of the Rock'em Sock'em Robots." We're like, 4? He's like, yeah, vintage one, current one, and a smaller one, and then the Christmas ornament one.
And then we stopped at a convenience store right outside of Chester, leaving the cemetery. And Jason's always checking out the toys at convenience stores, and he's like, look what they have. And it was, this brand called World's Smallest, and it was the little Rock'em Sock'em Robots kits, and they only had 3 of them. So we bought them to remember our trip, and it just... Danielle kept bringing up the synchronicity of Andy all weekend and how things are just like connecting and falling in with the dates and all this shit. And I was just like, man, like I'm not a even spiritual person in any ways, whatever, but it's just like, how could you not? Like, what are the odds,
Yeah.
Just funny
Yeah.
after seeing all them in the house and like just such an Andy thing to, he can't just own one. He's got to have a vintage one and a current one, and then you get the
Yeah.
Christmas ornament, and yeah, just very funny and seeing his collection, and sort of just feels like you stepped into his brain for.
That's exactly true. And I was gonna say that is like we all have our collections. I'm sitting in a room, with hundreds of tiny robots that turn into cars all around me, staring at me.
It's a pretty cool room.
It is.
And there's obviously stuff we see in each other's collections. It's like, well, I've got that, or I've seen that in somebody else. We all have our stuff. But when you look at Andy's collection, Andy's personality is on those shelves and on those walls. There may be stuff there that, oh, I've seen that or I own that, but the way he's got it arranged, some of the oddball stuff in his collection was very, very Andy.
Yeah.
I saw. I think there was a Bee Gees thermos. And what was the weird lunchbox that Mr. or something?
Mr. Wizard. He had a Mr. Wizard lunchbox.
A show I'd never heard of, and of course, we got to see the infamous lunchbox collection out in the sunroom, and just that alone, so impressive. I did not know how impressive his vinyl collection was.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to just go through it, but I didn't feel right, so I. That and it's
Yeah.
right there in the living room with all of Danielle's friends just hanging out. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna mess with it.
And this guy had movies in every room besides the bathroom.
I don't think you really expressed that enough. He had
Like-
fucking every format. He had a shelf. He had shelves full of every format of every movie in every corner of every room of the entire house.
Yep.
One, it was mostly maddening because of the
'Cause there's
alphabetation.
no order to it.
It's
It's
pure
in
madness.
Andy Wassom order only.
Yeah.
Danielle said he knew where all of them were, and they were in a certain order. Fuck if I know what
Could
that
not
order
have
was.
deciphered
Looking at
that.
it, yeah.
Only to him.
Yep, only to him.
Yeah, he loved movies.
Oh God, did he love movies? I mean, we all do. That's why we do this show.
Yeah.
But man, I think he might like movies a lot more than I do. I'm like, man, I'm just like,
try harder.
people have seen my, Blu-ray and DVD collection. I've normies see it and they're like, holy shit, man. And I'm like,
You don't know.
you don't know, man. This guy's got Laserdisc hidden under, here, and he's got
Betamax players in multiple rooms.
He's got
Yes.
formats that he can't even watch because he doesn't have anything to play it on. He's got video discs. He doesn't have a video disc player. He's got 8mm. He doesn't have a projector to play that shit on. Just a collector, man. Just love movies so much. Had to have. I saw a few different famously public domain movies that back in the VHS days everybody put out a copy of, and I swear he would try to find every single copy from each different distributor. There was a pretty big Night of the Living Dead collection. He had a stack of 6 or so Dementia 13 VHSs. Awesome. Amazing.
it's tons of signed stuff everywhere.
Oh yeah.
It's you're just looking through and stuff oh, is that signed? Yep, of course it's signed. He liked to meet everybody and tell the stories about meeting everybody. He remembered every interaction he's had with a horror celebrity, and just a man of culture, man. Just even his little writing closet was absolutely this little tiny. I mean, you had to crouch to get in this thing. He had stuffed a desk in there somehow, and the walls were just completely covered with. He had a framed Stallone record in there. He had a Halloween 3 sign, metal tin sign up on a corkboard in there. I mean, he had more in that room than I think some of my friends have in their collection. And in this closet that, it's like a shoe closet.
Yeah. It wasn't even big enough to really hold clothes.
No,
You know?
you could not one you can stand in. And
No.
Danielle said he would write in there.
That's crazy. There's a full desk in there, and he would write in there. That's crazy to me. Like, I'd be so claustrophobic. Forget about it.
So all of this is unprecedented, and definitely for us, and moving forward, it's going to be weird. And yep.
Yeah. Yeah, but we will continue, obviously. It's definitely what he would want. But, yeah. I don't know. What do you think, guys?
Well, I mean, there's there's some more. I had a couple more things I wanted to mention before we went, but
Yeah.
Go for it.
well, just some things like, I know we're gonna Halloween Palooza is gonna do a silent auction, for him, for Danielle. I mean, there's just always going to be medical expenses for a while, and just also to remention that their GoFundMe, those links, all that stuff, you can just follow our page and you'll see all that stuff when it comes up. But we're gonna do so this will come out for attackers on Wednesday, and then everyone will get to hear it on Friday. But then on this coming Sunday the 30th, we're gonna do a different kind of horror hangout where we'll make it open to everyone who wants to come, and it'll just be a actual hangout to talk about Andy. You know, if anybody has any questions for us or about any of that we might be able to answer, we'll answer them. And you know, we'd love to hear your stories too, and some of your favorite moments, and it's just a chance for everyone to get the opportunity to chat with us about our pal Andy. And that'll be, again, this coming Sunday, July 30th at 11 a.m. Central Time. If you just look on our pages and follow our stuff, we'll have links about a half an hour before that you can get on there. The other thing I heard them saying while we were down there, or I can't remember where, but just I feel like they'd want us to share the message of go learn CPR.
Yep.
If you haven't or don't, well, that's what saved our buddy, you know, and
Give us that extra time for him and for everybody that loved him.
that's an easy thing to do, and if you can help anybody, so definitely if you can go learn CPR. Well, that's all my crap, I guess.
It made me, the visit made me, and just the whole situation, but the visit too, just, and you hear it every time someone passes, and it shouldn't be only that time, but like, just let people know what they mean to you, and because tomorrow's not at all promised, as cliche as that sounds. Like,
so true.
We did not, we even, obviously had sort of a heads up, but just,
Yep.
Yep. Remind the people that you care about and how much you do care about them and that you love them. Yeah, because you never know. You don't want to be left in that position of did they know or how much they meant to you. So I also urge everybody to go to our YouTube channel and check out all those videos. Like I said earlier, Jason put together a playlist.
Thank you, Jason.
Yes, of all the videos, and I spent a couple hours this morning watching through them all, and just having a good time getting to hang out with Andy again. There's some great stuff in there, guys. Definitely, please check out those videos.
We're lucky that we have so many episodes and so many videos, because there's just, you don't think about it when you're recording this stuff and doing this stuff, that it's leaving some kind of mark, and comfort for those. Like, you hear all the time, like, people save voicemails forever and hoping that they don't get deleted from their phone of, their dad or someone, so they can hear their voice. And I mean, with advances in technology, we could almost, have Mandy back on the show. There's so much recording, you know, and
Yeah.
we were like literally talking about that when things were a little more optimistic, and it's like we're lucky that we have so many hours. We got to hang with him so many hours, and we can throw it on and just, you know, reminisce and hear his voice anytime we want, and
And
get
we heard
see
that
him.
from so many of his family members that they were thankful to us for him having that opportunity, and just it's pretty special.
Yep. And they can go back and hear him again whenever they need to. Yeah.
So
Like you
and,
said,
yeah.
unprecedented, you know, just
Yeah,
like
so fucking weird.
the
So fucked up.
the circumstances, but the silver linings. But is there a silver lining to losing a friend that fast at 43? But there is lots of silver linings, lots to be thankful for, and it's like, and it's still like, you know, it comes in waves. You know, it's like
Yeah.
earlier in this episode, I could barely fucking talk, and then, you know, now I'm good, and it's just like I'll be driving home, and it just hits me that he's gone, and it's like, what the fuck, man? As Danielle kept saying, it's fucking stupid. Like, what the it's just it's stupid and not fair. He's only one of our group that actually gave a shit and took care of himself and did all the right things, and his body said, no thanks, fuck you.
Yeah.
And to that I say, fuck you, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's bullshit. I mean, I'm not mad at the world, because he wouldn't want that, and he wasn't mad at the world, so I can't be myself.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna miss him a lot, and it's just never gonna be the same.
Nope.
Definitely not.
The world's a little more dim without him around, and hearing the stories, it wasn't just us that he brought all that joy to, and it sounds like wherever he went, he spread that Andy joy, and he could make a whole room laugh, and he still did, even when he was gone. He's making people at his own funeral laugh. So takes a special guy to do that.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Love you guys.
Love you, listeners.
Yes.
Love you,
the
Andy.
listeners. And love you, Andy. Yes, absolutely. Love
He
you,
told
man.
us. He told you he was going to get that fucking car.
That's right. So we're going to wrap it up, folks. That is it for this episode of Attack of the Killer podcast. Thank you for listening and us getting to take this opportunity to tribute our good friend that we miss dearly. And yes, we love you, Andy. And we love all of you. And we will talk to you next time on Attack of the Killer podcast.